Picture this. You're lying in a thin nylon tent somewhere deep in bear country or mountain lion territory, or, if you go back far enough, somewhere with actual lions. You're completely unconscious. You can't see. You can't run. You're making slow, rhythmic breathing sounds that, to anything listening, might as well be a dinner bell. By every rule of predator and prey, you are the easiest meal in the entire forest. And yet, across millions of camping trips, millions of nights spent by hunter-gatherers in the open, millions of nights across the entire history of our species, a predator walking up and killing a sleeping human is almost unheard of. That should bother you. It's strange. It doesn't match how nature is supposed to work. So what's actually going on? Why do animals that could easily kill us, animals with better night vision, sharper teeth, faster reflexes, routinely choose not to?
The answer turns out to be one of the more interesting quirks in the entire relationship between humans and the natural world. And it's not quite as simple as predators are scared of us, because sometimes they're not. And when that fear breaks down, the results are genuinely terrifying. The best prey animal in the forest, on paper. Let's start with why this should be easy for a predator. A sleeping human ticks every single box on a hunting checklist. No weapon in hand, no awareness of surroundings, no ability to flee, no group of alert lookouts, slow, deep breathing that broadcasts exactly where you are. Warm-blooded, soft-bodied, and about as far from armored as a mammal gets. If you handed a list of these traits to any predator biologist and asked, "What does an easy kill look like?" they'd describe a sleeping human almost exactly. So the fact that lions typically walk past sheltered sleeping humans, that wolves circle at a distance instead of closing in, that black bears investigate a tent and then simply leave, that's not nothing. That's a real behavioral pattern that needed a real explanation, and for a long time, nobody had a great one beyond predators are just cautious. Turns out cautious barely covers it. Humans are the scariest thing in the forest. Here's the part that surprised even wildlife researchers. Starting in the early 2010s, ecologists began running an unusual kind of experiment. They set up hidden speakers in the wilderness, everywhere from mountain lion territory in California to national parks in Africa, and played back different sounds to see how animals reacted. Sometimes the recording was a predator, a growling dog, a roaring lion, a snarling bear. Sometimes it was something completely different, a calm, ordinary human voice, just people chatting. The results were almost absurd. Mountain lions didn't just react more strongly to human voices than to other predators. They fled far more consistently, abandoned food sources, and became dramatically more cautious. Badgers in the UK, tested with the sounds of wolves and bears, animals they haven't shared land with in centuries, still feared human voices more than either. Even elephants, arguably one of the least vulnerable animals on the planet, bolted at the sound of people talking. Researchers ended up giving humans an actual scientific title because of this, the super predator. Not because we're the strongest or the fastest, but because of the sheer scale and unpredictability with which humans have killed wildlife for tens of thousands of years. We hunt using tools, from a distance, in ways no other predator can. We don't play by the normal rules of predator-prey combat, and evolution has apparently encoded that fact into an enormous number of species, whether or not any individual animal has ever personally been hunted by a person. So a sleeping human in a tent isn't just a soft, slow-moving mammal. To a nearby predator's nervous system, it's something closer to an unexploded bomb. Familiar shape, familiar scent, wrapped in a context that every instinct says to avoid. There's a second layer to this, and it's almost as interesting. Sleeping humans don't behave like prey, and that confuses predators just as much as it should. Predators hunt using patterns. A deer that hears a twig snap will freeze, then bolt in a predictable direction. A rabbit will zigzag. Prey species have consistent, evolved responses that predators have spent their own evolutionary history learning to read and exploit.
It's a kind of behavioral language. Movement means something, and predators are fluent in it. A sleeping human breaks that language completely. There's no eye contact, no flinch, no shift in body posture, no submission signal, no aggression signal, nothing. Researchers who've studied wolf behavior around campsites describe wolves circling at a distance rather than approaching, seemingly trying to interpret a creature that's giving them absolutely nothing to work with. Total stillness from something that size doesn't read as weak to an animal wired to detect threats. It reads as unnervingly confident or simply unclassifiable. And unclassifiable is a category predators tend to avoid rather than test.
Layer in the effect of fire, another human tool most large predators have learned to steer clear of, and the combination of smells like the super predator, isn't behaving like prey, and is surrounded by the thing that burns adds up to one of the most effectively defended sleeping positions in the entire animal kingdom, without a single weapon involved. This is not a guarantee. Here's the part a responsible video on this topic has to include, because the full picture isn't predators are magically harmless while we sleep. It's healthy, undisturbed predators are extremely reluctant to test us, and that word healthy is doing a lot of work. Throughout the early 20th century in northern India, a small number of individual tigers and leopards became infamous specifically because they broke this pattern. The most extreme case, a tigress operating in the Nepal-India border region in the early 1900s, was linked to an estimated 436 deaths before she was finally killed in 1907. Investigators later found she'd suffered a gunshot injury that had broken teeth on one side of her jaw, an injury that made hunting her normal, fast-moving prey extremely difficult. Humans, by comparison, were slow, unarmed, and easy. A separate leopard, active in the same region roughly a decade later, killed well over 100 people over 8 years and became notorious for something specific: breaking into huts at night and dragging people out of their sleep. Villages along a major pilgrimage route effectively shut down after dark for the better part of a decade because of one single animal. What connects almost every documented man-eater in the historical record is the same theme: injury, illness, old age, or a shrinking supply of normal prey, removing the option of hunting anything faster or better armed than a human. In other words, these weren't cases of a healthy predator calmly deciding a sleeping human was worth the risk. They were cases of an animal that had run out of other options and had, at some point, discovered that humans don't fight back the way everything else does. That's the exception that proves the rule. It takes an animal in genuinely desperate circumstances to override hundreds of thousands of years of built-in caution around us. So, what are the actual odds? Zoom back out to the present day, and the numbers are almost comically lopsided in our favor. Every year, tens of millions of people camp overnight in territory shared with wolves, bears, mountain lions, and other large predators.
Confirmed fatal attacks on sleeping campers across that entire global pool of nights are close enough to zero that individual cases make international news for years afterward. You are, by a wide margin, in more danger during the car ride to the campsite than during the night you spend inside it. The fear that spikes at every snapped twig outside a tent is a genuine, ancient survival instinct. It's just responding to conditions that mostly stopped applying a very long time ago, at least anywhere without a specific, well-documented problem animal in the area. The real takeaway. A sleeping human looks, on paper, like the easiest kill in the animal kingdom. In practice, we come preloaded with a reputation. Tens of thousands of years of hunting, tool use, and unpredictable behavior have made humans the single most feared silhouette in the wild, more frightening to most animals than lions are to each other.
Add in a species that refuses to behave like normal prey even while unconscious, and most predators would genuinely rather walk away hungry than find out what happens next. It only stops working when an animal has nothing left to lose: old, injured, starving, out of easier options. For every other predator, on every other ordinary night, the smart move has always been the same one they've been making for generations: leave the strange, silent, human-shaped thing alone. So next time something rustles outside the tent at 3 a.m., you can be reasonably confident of one thing: whatever's out there almost certainly already decided you're more trouble than you're worth.